You do not hear it the first night. The second night, you tell yourself it is the house settling, old wood, old bones, nothing more. The third night, you are no longer sure, because whatever is standing at the foot of the bed is not the house. It is not a dream, and it has been here far longer than you have. What was found inside the Calloway farmhouse in Hocking County, Ohio, in the autumn of 2019 has never been fully explained by the sheriff's department, the family's physician, or anyone who walked through that front door. What investigators documented in their reports used the word disturbance carefully, deliberately, as if a stronger word would have required them to believe something they were not ready to believe. This is the full account, everything that happened, and the one detail that changes everything you think you understand about it. The Calloway family had lived on County Road 56 outside of Logan, Ohio, for 11 years. Marcus Calloway ran a small equipment repair business out of the barn on the property. His wife, Dana, worked 3 days a week at the elementary school in town. Their daughter, Cassie, was 15, sharp, quiet, the kind of girl who read books other teenagers had never heard of and preferred the company of those books to most people she had met. By every visible measure, they were unremarkable, a family held together by routine, by the rhythm of a small Ohio town where everyone knew your truck by sound and your name by sight. That changed in late September, when Dana's older brother called from Cincinnati. His name was Patrick. His wife had passed suddenly, an aneurysm, no warning, no goodbye, leaving behind a 16-year-old son named Cole. Patrick was not capable, not then, not with the grief sitting on his chest the way it was, and so the decision was made the way difficult family decisions always are, quietly, between adults, over the phone, after the children were in bed. Cole would come to the Calloway house. Cassie was not consulted. She found out the next morning at breakfast, and something in her face shifted in a way that her mother noticed and filed away without fully understanding. She had met Cole before, twice, at family gatherings years ago. She remembered him as loud, intrusive, careless, the kind of boy who borrowed things without asking and laughed too hard at things that were not funny. She did not want him in her house. She said nothing, but she thought a great deal. Cole arrived on a Thursday. He was taller than Cassie had remembered, thinner. He carried one bag and said very little. The loss was visible on him the way weather is visible on an old barn, not in one place, but everywhere, all at once. Dana made his favorite meal that first night without knowing it was his favorite, just a coincidence. Cole ate 2 helpings and thanked her quietly and went upstairs. His room was directly across the hall from Cassie's. For the first week, things were almost normal. Cole helped Marcus in the barn without being asked. He did the dishes after dinner. He was careful, contained, almost invisible, as if he understood he was a guest in a grief of his own making, an inconvenience dressed in politeness. Wife watched all of this from a careful distance, and then she began watching something else. On the bookshelf in her room, behind her school textbooks, behind a row of novels she no longer read, there was a volume she had acquired 8 months earlier from a seller she had found through an online forum. No author listed, no publication date. The cover was dark cloth, worn smooth at the corners. She had told herself when she bought it that it was curiosity, that it meant nothing. She opened it again that Thursday night after the lights went out across the hall. She told herself this, too, meant nothing. One detail she would later remember: the moment she opened the book, the temperature in the room dropped, noticeably, quickly. She pulled her blanket up and kept reading. She did not find this strange. She should have. The third night after Cole arrived, he woke at 2:17 in the morning. He would remember the time exactly because he looked at his phone the moment his eyes opened, and the phone was dead. fully charged when he put it on the nightstand, completely drained now. The room was cold. Something was standing in the corner. He could not make out a shape clearly. The darkness there was simply denser than it should have been, gathered, intentional, as if the shadow had weight and was choosing to use it. He lay still. He told himself he was half asleep. He told himself the drive from Cincinnati and the grief and the unfamiliar house were playing tricks on him. He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the empty corner was empty. But the window was open. He had not opened it. The temperature in October in Hocking County drops into the 40s at night. He had not opened that window. He closed it. He went back to sleep. He did not tell Marcus or Dana. He was already the grieving boy taking up space in someone else's home. He was not going to be the grieving boy who also saw things in corners. What researchers who study shadow perception, a documented phenomenon occurring in states between waking and deep sleep, will tell you is that the human mind, under extended stress, can manufacture presences that feel absolutely real. The visual cortex fires. The body responds with genuine fear chemicals. The experience is indistinguishable from waking reality. What they will also tell you is that this does not explain the open window. By the second week, Cole was not sleeping. Not fully, not safely. Each night pulled him down just far enough to reach whatever waited there, and then pushed him back up gasping, drenched, unable to explain what he had seen because the images dissolved the moment he was fully conscious. Only the feeling remained. The feeling that something had been very close, that it had been studying him. Dana noticed the hollows forming under his eyes. She noticed he had stopped eating full meals. She attributed it to grief, the delayed wave that often hits weeks after a loss when the initial shock has passed and the reality of absence becomes permanent. She did not know about the corner. She did not know about the book across the hall. On the night of October 14th, Marcus woke at 3 a.m. to the sound of something he could not immediately identify. He lay still and listened. It was Cole, somewhere in the house, not in his room. Marcus found him in the kitchen, standing at the sink facing the window. Still, not moving, not responding to his name. When Marcus touched his shoulder, Cole spun around and the expression on his face was not Cole's expression. It took only a second, a flicker, the face of something wearing Cole like a mask, looking out through his eyes, surprised to be seen. Then Cole blinked, and he was just Cole again. Confused, frightened. "I was sleepwalking," he said. "I have never sleepwalked before in my life." Marcus brought him back to his room. He did not sleep again that night. 2 days later, Cassie went further in the book. She would not be able to explain later why she did. She was angry at Cole for receiving the attention she felt was hers, at her parents for not seeing her clearly, at the quiet invasion of a person she had never chosen to love. The anger was real. The book was available. Paranormal researchers and folklorists who study the tradition of invitation-based phenomena documented across Appalachian folk practice, Pennsylvania German hexerei, and older European grimoire traditions describe a consistent pattern. The practice does not require belief. It requires only action. The words spoken, the symbols drawn, the invitation extended. Whatever responds does not check the sincerity of the one who called. It only checks that the door is open. Cassie had opened it wider. It was 11:40 on a Tuesday morning when Dana heard the sound from the living room. Not a crash, not a shout, something worse, a low, continuous sound that had no clear source, like pressure building inside the walls of the house itself. She came out of the kitchen. Cole had Cassie against the far wall, both hands. She was not able to get free. His eyes were open, but they were not looking at Cassie. They were not looking at anything in the room. They were directed inward or outward towards something no one else could see. His face had reorganized itself into an expression that did not belong to a 16-year-old boy from Cincinnati who fixed things without being asked and thanked people for meals. Dana crossed the room and pulled them apart. It took everything she had. Cole did not fight her. The moment the contact broke, he seemed to return, confused, trembling, with no memory of what had just happened. He sat on the floor and put his face in his hands and said nothing. That afternoon, Marcus drove 40 minutes to a woman in MacArthur named Ruth, who had been consulted by 3 other families in the county over the past decade for situations that could not be resolved by the resources normal families have access to. She was not a practitioner. She was a reader, someone who could identify what was present, where it originated, and what had given it permission to be there. She came that evening. She walked through the house without speaking for 11 minutes. She stood outside Cole's room for a long time. Then she turned to Dana and Marcus. "Something was invited here," she said, "recently, and it is not finished." She asked if there was anyone in the house who had been working with old material, books, symbols, anything written in a language they did not fully understand. Dana and Marcus looked at each other. Then they both looked toward the closed door of Cassie's room. Cassie told them everything. Not all at once, not easily. It came out the way confessions come when someone has been carrying something too heavy for too long, in pieces, with long silences between them, with the kind of crying that has nothing performative in it. She had found the forum 8 months ago. She had purchased the book. She had begun with small things, nothing she could prove worked, nothing with consequences she could see. Gradually, she had tested further. By the time Cole arrived, she had been practicing long enough to believe she understood what she was doing. She had not understood anything. What she had done, Ruth explained quietly to the family later that night, was create a sustained invitation, not to any one presence. The book she had used was not specific in that way, but to whatever monitored those open channels and chose to respond. It had attached to Cole because Cole was already fractured by loss. Grief creates what practitioners in the Appalachian folk tradition call thin places, points where the barrier between an ordinary person and something older, darker, and deeply patient becomes permeable. It had not come for Cassie. She was the door. Cole was the room. Ruth worked through the night. What Marcus and Dana witnessed was quiet and deliberate and left all 3 of them unwilling to discuss the specifics for years afterwards. By 4 in the morning, the house felt different. Not safe exactly, but empty in a way that it had not been empty for weeks. Cole slept for 14 hours. When he woke, he remembered none of it. Cassie did not sleep at all. The Calloway family does not speak about that autumn publicly. Marcus and Dana have not given interviews. Cole, who was now in his early 20s and living in Columbus, declined to respond to inquiries for this account. Cassie has. In a brief exchange through a mutual contact carefully anonymized, she confirmed the broad shape of the events as documented. She said she had destroyed the book. She said she had not returned to any of it, not once, in the years since. She said she believed the matter was concluded. She was asked one final question. The question was, "Do you think it is gone?" She did not answer immediately. The pause lasted long enough that the person asking thought the connection had dropped. Then she said, "Ruth told us it was gone. I believe Ruth knew what she was doing." Then another silence. But some nights, Cole still calls me, not to talk about it, just to talk. And sometimes in the middle of a completely ordinary conversation, he goes quiet for a moment, and I ask him what is wrong. And he says, "Nothing. I just thought I heard something." He always says it's nothing. He always sounds like he is not entirely sure.